Let's go back in time for a minute. Picture this. It's late August 1944. You're inside a German command post right on the French coast. Officers are huddled around, and they're just staring at this report, a report from their new terror campaign against London. And the numbers? Well, the numbers just don't add up. They seem to break every known law of physics. The room is just thick with confusion and, honestly, a little bit of disbelief. On one single day, a mind-boggling 82% of their V-1 flying bombs, these were supposed to be Hitler's unstoppable vengeance weapons, were shot out of the air before they could even get close to the city. German observers could actually see it happening through their field telescopes, these missiles just tumbling out of the air, hit by anti-aircraft shells that seemed to defy all logic.
So that's the big question, right? That's the mystery we're going to unravel today. What was this secret the Allies had? What could produce a result that German scientists had already calculated was a mathematical impossibility? To figure out how they did it, we first have to understand the weapon they were fighting against.
Okay, so first, you've got to understand the V-1 itself. It was unleashed just 1 week after D-Day, and this was Hitler's big promise of retaliation. He called it the Vengeance Weapon 1. And it wasn't just designed to destroy London's buildings, it was designed to terrorize its people into giving up.
You know, you can look at the specs on the screen, but try to really imagine it. Imagine a pilotless jet bomb literally screaming through the sky at 400 miles per hour. It had this very distinct sputtering roar that people in London started calling the buzz bomb, and it carried nearly a ton of high explosives. It was fast, it was cheap, and best of all for the Germans, it didn't require an aircrew to risk their lives. The German high command was absolutely certain this thing would bring Britain to its knees.
And here's the thing. According to all the science of ballistics at the time, it was pretty much unstoppable. I mean, think about it. The gunners on the ground had maybe 30 seconds to engage this tiny, super-fast target. The odds of a standard anti-aircraft shell getting a direct hit, they calculated it at less than 1 in 10,000. Even the fastest Allied fighter planes had trouble catching it, and if they got too close to shoot it down, they risked being blown up by the explosion. By every single measure, London should have been defenseless.
Which, of course, brings us right back to that impossible number. For the German commander in charge of the V-1s, a man named Obs Max Wachtel, the reports he was getting from his observation posts were just getting weirder and weirder. The British were adapting with what seemed like an almost supernatural speed.
82%. Just let that sink in. In only 10 weeks, the kill rate over the coastal gun line had shot up from a totally understandable 17% to this. It was a number that just mocked all of their engineering prowess. It wasn't just high, it was physically impossible based on the weapons they knew the Allies had.
And this is really the heart of the mystery. The observers weren't reporting direct hits. No, they were seeing puffs of smoke from flak bursts near the V-1s. Clear misses by any normal standard. But then they'd watch as the bombs would suddenly just falter and fall out of the sky. Somehow, near misses were becoming kills.
So, yeah, put yourself in their shoes for a second. What would you be thinking? Wachtel's first guess was sabotage. Had to be, right? He ordered emergency inspections, tore the missiles apart looking for some kind of flaw. He found nothing. They did test firings over their own territory, and the bombs worked perfectly. The problem only happened when the V-1s were flying towards British guns. They were getting desperate for an answer, and all the while, that kill rate just kept climbing higher. The answer was a piece of technology that the Germans themselves had actually looked into and then dismissed as total science fiction. What they were witnessing was the deployment of one of the war's most important secrets, a project that was protected with the same level of security as the atomic bomb. It was called the proximity fuse, or by its code name, the VT fuse. Now, the VT officially stood for variable time, which was a deliberately boring name. It was meant to trick German intelligence into thinking it was just a slightly better clockwork fuse. But it wasn't a clock. It was a brain. This was, for all intents and purposes, a thinking shell. And the genius of it was this. This tiny little device, packed right into the nose of an artillery shell, first had to survive being shot out of a cannon. And that's an event of unimaginable violence. We're talking 20,000 times the force of gravity. The instant it was fired, its miniature radio would start broadcasting a signal. When that signal bounced off a target like a V-1 and came back, the fuse just knew it was close enough, and it triggered the explosion. It turned every single shell into a smart, target-seeking grenade.
Now, German engineers had actually tried to develop this exact same technology, and they gave up. They said it was impossible. How could these delicate little vacuum tubes, the size of your thumbnail, survive the blast of a cannon? Well, American engineers, borrowing designs that were originally made to be more rugged for hearing aids, they figured it out. They just solved every single impossible problem one by one.
But here's the thing. The real secret weapon wasn't just the fuse itself. No, it was the industrial system that could build it by the millions. So the crucial point here is that this story isn't just about a clever gadget. It's really about two competing philosophies of how to wage war.
Just look at this mismatch. It says it all. The Germans launched about 9,500 V-1s from France during that whole campaign. In that same war, America produced 22 million proximity fuses. That's not just a battle of technology. That's an industrial avalanche.
This slide really gets to the heart of it. Germany was focused on creating these perfect, complex wonder weapons like the V-1. They were often built in limited numbers and, tragically, with slave labor. America, on the other hand, mobilized its entire civilian electronics industry, we're talking 110 factories, over 80,000 workers, to mass produce what you could call a multiplicative technology. This was a device that didn't replace a gun, it just made every single gun already out there 10 times deadlier.
And they did it with incredible efficiency. The first fuses they made back in 1942 cost over $700 apiece. By 1945, thanks to the sheer power of the American assembly line, they drove that cost down to just $18. They were, quite literally, mass-producing military miracles on the cheap.
So, what was the real impact of this secret? Well, it didn't just change the defense of London. It taught a massive lesson about the nature of modern war, a lesson that still echoes today.
The numbers really do say it all. Before the fuse, it took, on average, 2,500 shells to shoot down one V-1. Afterwards, it took about 100. This little device made every anti-aircraft gunner way more effective almost overnight. This didn't just change military reports, it saved the lives of tens of thousands of ordinary Londoners. Without it, analysts projected casualties would have been 4 to 5 times higher.
And the Germans? They stayed completely in the dark. Not a single working fuse fell into their hands during the entire campaign. When their top scientists were finally shown one after the war was over, they were just stunned. They estimated they were at least 10 years behind in that technology. They had been beaten by an enemy they couldn't see, using a weapon they couldn't even comprehend. And that's really the ultimate takeaway here. The victory over the V-1 wasn't just a win for engineering. It was a win for a system. It was a victory of industrial democracy and mass collaboration over this totalitarian focus on perfect, bespoke weapons. It proved that in a modern war, the assembly line is just as powerful as the battle line.
And that leaves us with a pretty powerful question for our own time, doesn't it? It's this incredible reminder that the most decisive weapon isn't always the most complex or the most futuristic. Sometimes it's the solution that you can produce, adapt, and scale faster than your opponent can even understand what's happening. It really makes you wonder, what are the invisible, scalable advantages of today?